How's everybody doing? Today's video is actually going to be something I've never done before, which is an unboxing. It's actually been a while since I bought a guitar, but now I finally did get a new one, or a new used 2019 model that you're going to see here in a minute. And then after I unbox it, I'm going to basically walk you through the steps that I do really to any guitar that I buy, whether it's new or used. And basically just walk you through how to prep a guitar that you're just getting for the first time to be played. So we're going to start with the unboxing. Apologies for the framing. So as you can see, it is a flying V. It's actually the first V that I've ever owned, or actually even played probably, or I should say will have played because I haven't played it yet. There's going to be a really long cut of me just looking at this thing, so that's why the camera moved. Like I said, I got this one used from Guitar Center. It is a 2019 model, so it is not that old. It actually still has the clear plastic over the pickguard, which I noticed in the photos. So this is what is considered the B-2 flying V, meaning that's the finish, trim, spec, and all that. They call it the B-2. I think they only came in this kind of satin black. It's almost like a... I mean, it is satin. It's definitely not full gloss, but it's not as satin as it could be. It feels like a very thin finish. You can feel kind of the wood right through it, which I like. Yeah, it is nitro, so it's going to resonate really well, especially with that thin finish. This model comes with the Dirty Fingers Plus pickups, which are apparently some of the hotter ones that Gibson makes. I usually use a Gibson 496R and 500T, and I think these are pretty close in that ballpark, if not a little bit hotter maybe. So it'll be cool to hear how this sounds. But anyway, when these were new, I think they were right around $1,500. This one I picked up for $800. It's basically a year old. It's actually in really good shape. I mean, I keep getting like startled whenever I see just any little tiny thing, because I keep thinking that this is new, but it's not. It's like throwing me off that it still has the plastic and it's just generally in such good shape. One thing that you really have to watch out for, obviously, on a V shape is that the corners, which stick out a lot, are going to hit things. You're going to have a lot of finish checking usually, or dings. This, the top of the headstock is fine. This end is fine. The front of this is fine, but there is like a tiny little scuff on the back of the bottom part, but you're never going to see that, you're never going to feel that. But aside from that, this guitar looks like it's in perfect shape. I haven't plugged it in yet, but it looks to be in really good shape. I was hoping that they would angle the switch kind of more how your hand might sweep to it, and it looks like they did, so that's good. One thing that I like about the 2019 spec versus I think the one that's currently out is that the current one has an inlaid logo that's like tiny right on the end of the headstock, and the 2019 has the Gibson logo on the truss rod cover, which I think looks a lot better. I'm gonna have to stop myself because I'm like starting to do almost like a review of this, and this is really just like an unboxing and setup video. So I'll do a full review video later on. So essentially, whenever I receive a guitar that has been shipped, what I like to do is, of course, check for shipping damage. And then after that, check for things that may have become loose. So usually anything that is wood to metal contact, as the guitar goes through temperature changes, especially now, it's January, it will have, you know, heated up, cooled off. It's really not good for a guitar to do that, but it's not the worst. It's just going to cause the wood potentially to expand and then contract, and you're gonna have like things like a jack plate. A lot of the time, the nuts around tuning heads could come loose. just from shipping, just normal temperature differences in shipping. Those seem to be okay on this one. The only things I can see are this top strap button can spin, so that seems a little bit loose, but I'll tighten that up easily. And then a couple of screws on the pickup ring actually. So first thing I'm gonna do is just tighten those down. So I tightened down the neck pickup ring. This top strap button still spins. It feels like the hole that the screw is in is stripped out. There's actually a pretty easy trick to fixing that, which almost anybody can do. So that actually could be another video where I can just show you guys how to fix a loose strap button the easiest way possible. Although I am gonna change the strings pretty quick here. I should probably tune this up just to see how it sets into tension. This guitar is actually pretty loud acoustically. I'm just kind of surprised. I don't really have any experience with the V-shape, but it is mahogany body, mahogany neck. It's got a pretty good mass to it, but it's pretty loud. Another thing, when you first get a guitar that has been shipped, a good way to see if you have any loose, like tuning peg, nuts, or anything like that, is just play it. And if there's loose ones, you're gonna hear like a lot of buzzing on the headstock, and you can figure out which one is loose. It's pretty easy to track down. This doesn't have any buzzing, so that's good. The frets on this one, not surprisingly, are very clean. I'm not surprised that there's no fret wear considering it's 2019 and it still has the plastic on. That just tells me that somebody bought this guitar, or maybe it was even a gift and they just never played it and were like, why am I gonna hold on to this when I can just trade it in or sell it? But what I am gonna do is take this plastic off the pickguard because I don't like to leave it on. I don't even really like pickguards, but I'm definitely not gonna leave the plastic on. Also, on a lot of Gibson pickguards, if you leave the plastic on for too long, it will actually like kind of discolor the pickguard. But this being a 2019, I don't have to worry about that. I'm just taking the plastic off. I kind of don't blame them for leaving that on. That was kind of a pain in the ass. It's like every single control was put on top of the plastic. Another thing that you should obviously do when you get a guitar that's been shipped in is make sure the electronics work. So I'm going to start on the neck pickup, bring the volume in. This I think is just a tone, so let's see. Yep, so it's one volume, one tone, middle position. Bridge, neck. I wouldn't be surprised if these are the original strings that it left the factory with. And although the frets look great, the fretboard is very dry, which is also how most Gibsons leave the factory. or any new Gibsons that I've seen, always leave the factory with a very dry fretboard. I think this guitar has never been broken in, never been conditioned in. The only thing that I've discovered so far is just this loose strap button. But again, that's a pretty easy fix. So far I'm pretty happy. One last thing that it's a good idea to do when you first receive a guitar is check the neck relief. So before I change the strings, and now that I know it's in tune and up to tension, I'm just looking down the edge of the fretboard. I just played it, it didn't feel like the neck relief was off, but I'm just visually checking. It does have exactly the amount of relief that I would set into it, so it's probably the amount that it was built with. This being my 4th Gibson that I've owned, I have yet to need to pull the truss rod cover on any of them, so I'm not surprised. I would be pretty surprised if I did have to adjust it. And I set it on this bubble wrap just because that's right where the strap peg is. And now you're probably going to see a time lapse while I take the strings off. Before I've oiled it, this guitar actually does have a nice grain to the fretboard. But then what I'm going to do is oil it with some lemon oil, Dunlop 65. I don't know if you can tell in the video or if it just looks like there's a light shining in my face, but I have a light coming over it like this so that I can see small details really well. Essentially everything that I'm looking towards is casting a shadow, so you can see the wood grain casting a shadow, you can see little chips and scratches that way, you can see a lot more detail that way. By going over it with this paper towel, mainly I'm not trying to dry up the lemon oil, I'm really trying to just distribute it into the corners of the frets so it just gets saturated, and then I can kind of make sure I get every little bit of the surface. And then you can go over it just lightly. You don't want to just take all of it off, but most of it's absorbed by now anyway. This guitar is actually a lot less dusty than I expected it to be, considering that it has not been played. I have guitars that get dustier than this every couple weeks in my bedroom, and it doesn't have any grime built up, it doesn't have any grime on the bridge, it doesn't have any grime near the pickups. I mean, essentially, the way this bridge looks, it looks like it might have been played twice, 2 or 3 times maybe. I mean, it's crazy how new this condition is. So this is usually where I get a little bit of the dust off, but it really has almost none to speak of. But I will say the fretboard now looks dry again. So I'm gonna give it just a little bit more lemon oil, and then that'll probably be it. That'll be all that it takes. On this one, I'm gonna rub it in, and then I will try to take off any excess because I don't want to put a ton of oil into something that's always been dry and saturate it, but I do want it to be oiled, so you kind of have to gauge. You don't want to soak it, you don't want it to go from being totally dry to totally soaked, but you do want it to be playable. And that round is actually looking a lot nicer. This is how I would expect it to look, with this sort of dark wood grain to it. Yeah, that looks a lot better. I don't know if you can really tell the grain to it, but that looks a whole lot better. Now it looks like a new conditioned fretboard versus a new super dry one. And now I'm gonna put the strings, the new strings, on. There we go. Got some fresh strings. And then I'm just putting some XLR8 on the strings. So when it's time for me to play it and just rip it for the first time, I'll be all ready to go. Thank you guys for watching my new guitar video. I never have really done a video like that before, so hopefully that was interesting. The only thing I didn't really touch on was setting up the action, because that guitar doesn't really need it, or it doesn't need it obviously. Once I've played it a few times, I'll probably tweak it, but it's not something that I could tell it needed right away.